Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 3, the first keynote of day 3 of SGU. We're just going to give one more minute for additional delegates to join. Great. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone on day 3 of SGU. This is the first keynote of the day. Our guest today is Agnieszka Lukaszczyk. She is the Senior Director for European Affairs at Planet. Previously, she worked at the European Commission as a policy officer for space data and applications there. And prior to that, she was the office director for the Brussels office of the Secure World Foundation. Agnieszka has a long history with SGAC. She's previously served as the chairperson and executive director, and we are very excited to have her present a keynote this morning. The keynote will be about a half hour. I would remind everyone to keep their mics muted and submit questions through the Q&A. At the end of the keynote, I will read some of those questions off, and we will start a conversation with Agnieszka. Agnieszka, you have the floor.
Thank you, Joseph, for introduction. I'm very excited to be giving a keynote at this event. And it's kind of crazy to be able actually to give a keynote speech at SGAC, at the event organized by SGAC, simply because I was organizing these events back in the day, and it would never cross my mind that one day I will be given a keynote. So this is really, really exciting, but it also makes me feel quite old, to be honest. But indeed, I was the first executive director of SGAC. Back in the day, and then I served as a chair, and this was definitely a trampoline to my career. So all of you who are involved and engaged with SGC, you're doing the right thing, because to me this is still like what I call my space family, and I met my best friends through this organization. So I do hope you will as well. But let me share my screen so I can show you some slides. All right, can everyone see that? Joseph, can you see that? You just nod your head. Okay, great. All right, I want to talk to you a little bit about Planet and why what we do matters. And there's also a very interesting connection between Planet and SGAC that we'll tell you about as well. So that is just going to demonstrate that when you come out of SGAC, you can really do amazing things. And we have actually thought about for a long time, we had thought about how to make Earth observation a little bit better. And at Planet, we kind of, I mean, it's an obvious thing, but we feel like we need to repeat it a lot, that what you cannot see, you cannot really fix it. So if you want to fix and address issues around the world, you really need to have a proper awareness of what is happening. So we need to have eyes on Earth at all times. And until fairly recently, the Earth observation programs, which have been and are amazing, were not quite there to give us the total awareness about what is happening on planet Earth. But let me tell you about how we started. So these guys started Planet back in 2010, at the end of 2010, and they were working at NASA as scientists, and they were working also on Earth observation, and thought things are going a little bit slow, a little bit inefficient. They had an idea how to do things a little bit differently. And so they started meeting, after work and during weekends in the garage, because apparently all startups are always begin in the garage. Like I always wonder, why can't they just start in the living room or something, but it has to be a garage. And so these guys have been meeting and trying to come up with some ideas. The three founders, by the way, are former SGAC members. They have actually met through SGAC. They didn't know each other at all. So the guy sitting on a chair, talking on the phone, that's William Marshall. It's our CEO. He's from UK. The guy on the left is Robbie Schingler from US, and behind him, Chris Boschhausen with the red shirt from Australia. Now, Robbie is one of the co-founders of SGAC. He was there at Unispace 3. And him and Robbie and Chris, actually, Chris was executive director at SGAC as well. They have met through SGAC, and they were thinking about what to do, what was the best next big thing after SGAC. And they actually brought me to the space sector. So Will was the chair of Space Generation when I was recruited to work as executive director. So as you can tell, the connection is very strong, and it's just all a bit of a space mafia right there. So here is a bit of a timeline about Planet, and it goes actually further down the line than 2010, because in 2017 or 15 actually, we have acquired a Blackbridge company, a German company with rapid eye satellites, and that company has been around already for 10 years. And with those satellites, we have gotten another constellation. And in 2017, we have acquired Terabella. That was this kind of a space arm of Google. It used to be called Skybox with SkySat satellites, but I will tell you all about that later on. This is not that interesting. What is interesting is that why start a company like that? Everybody thought that these guys were crazy. They're like, look, these small satellites that you're thinking about, they look like toys. They're never going to work. If they're going to work, the quality is not going to be good enough. So, don't waste your money and time and money on it. But these guys were really determined to do it, because they thought, with what we have today, we have lack of insights. Therefore, we don't act properly, and we often make uninformed decisions. So it's really important that we add an extra layer of Earth observation that will help us to make better decisions in life. So this just shows you, because until now, Earth observation, the satellites usually have about a revisit time of 5 days. So a satellite will come, will look at something, and then it's gone for 5 days. As you can imagine, many things can change in 5 days, and many things can go wrong in 5 days. So here you have, for instance, a plane departs, and the military doesn't really know where it is. You all know this story with a Malaysian plane that has disappeared and nobody knew where it went, because we cannot observe everything all the time. What about illegal logging? That is happening all over the world, particularly in Amazon. A lot of trees can be gone in 5 days. If we don't catch it early, big damage can be done. So we think, of course, there's a better way to do this. And we came up with this mission. That was our mission one. It was to image world every day, which hasn't been done until we entered the game, because we wanted to really make the change visible, accessible, and actionable. So here is what these guys came up with. This is our little baby called Dove. This satellite is very small. It's 3U, so it's 30 centimeters by 10 centimeters. It's about 5 kilograms. It weighs less than my cat, if that tells you anything. So it looks like a toy, and nobody thought it could actually provide a quality information. But surprise, surprise, actually these guys are working super well. Obviously we didn't know, but this is what happens with new space companies. You got to take risks. You got to try new things. Otherwise you will never really succeed. There's this saying in Silicon Valley that if you haven't failed at least 3 times, that means that your idea is not innovative enough. So I'm not telling you guys to fail 3 times, but don't be afraid to take risks. This is how big ideas come about. By the way, I don't know if you noticed on the solar panels, there is a bit of a design. We also work with artists. So if any of you is an artist, we have artists and residents at Planet. Our solar panels are designed because we're not just launching technology, we're also launching art into space, by the way. So we are manufacturing, we are a A to Z company, we're vertically integrated. This is also very unusual for a space company. Most companies specialize in one thing. So they, for instance, operate satellites, but they buy them somewhere else, or they're just manufacture and they sell them to somebody. We do everything. So we do R&D, we manufacture, we operate satellites, we process the data. Our manufacturing facility in California can manufacture up to 4 doves per week, 40 satellites per week, if you can imagine. This is huge. It's not that we do that because we don't need to be building so many satellites per week unless we're going to start selling them at like Toys R Us or something. But it's not that is not necessary. But it is important because of launches. As you can imagine, small satellites are like that, are never quite the primary payload. So we usually hitchhike into space. So we have to be always ready. And so when there's an available launch, we can jump on it very quickly because we can build these guys very quickly. Here's how it looks like. So we have launched up to date over 400 of these guys. They're not all operational anymore, but that is the round number. And what is happening that these guys are forming kind of a belt around Earth, right? Going from north to south. And because Earth is spinning from east to west, it's pretty much like it's going through a scanner. So these satellites are static. They're passive. They're not moving around. They're just only stay on its orbit, on their orbit. And as you can see, each satellite takes a strip, and the next one takes another strip and another strip. And that way we can actually observe the entire globe every day because the Earth turns around every day. I want to show you this launch. This was a big launch, the biggest in the world, 104 satellites on that launch. It came with, on the Indian rocket, ISRO. Those are our doves, by the way. Always terrifies me to see this. They just throw them out like a piece of garbage, but apparently that's how it's done. And I'm just like, oh my God, the precious cargo. But we had 88 satellites on that particular launch, and that one launch pretty much made a constellation for us, which was extraordinary. Yeah, so I always like to look back at it. Here are our satellites. So I told you about our doves. The doves are the ones in the middle. We have 160 of them. They are all our satellites are optical. These guys have about 3.5 meter resolution. Then we have 5 rapid eye satellites. These are about 5 to 6 meter. These guys are, we are retiring these guys because they are towards the end of their lifespan. And then we have SkySats. Those are super exciting. We have actually, I did not update that slide, but it's 18 of those. And those guys are very high resolution. So they can take videos, and the resolution is 50 centimeters. And they're obviously taskable. So they work super well with doves. So the doves are monitoring. And if there's an area of interest, we can send in the SkySat can zoom in and really take a good image of whatever we're looking at. So here's just like to show you, what we can see. What is that resolution? What does it really mean in real terms? So the areas where you can use Earth observation, I mean, those are just like the usual suspects that you see here, but really you can use in so many different areas. We are just scratching the surface with the customers that we have today. And there's going to be, there's more and more coming up all the time. We're just actually discovering the capabilities that we can do with it. Here you get some numbers. Numbers are always good. Numbers always, I don't know if you guys have read Little Prince ever, but Little Prince always said that this is the problem with adults, that they always communicate in numbers, How old are you? What's your phone number? How much do you make? It's all about numbers. So here are the numbers of Planet. We take 1.3 million pictures a day, which is crazy, a lot. We have over 45 ground station antennas around the world. We actually own those as well. We've had a lot of launches, and these numbers pretty much change every day. So this is probably already old news what I'm showing you here, but it should give you an idea. So what is also cool about the fact that we are building and doing everything at home in-house is that we can always tweak those satellites. So every time we send those satellites, we launch them, they're better than the ones before. They're never quite the same. We're always able to improve them. And this is kind of also the added value of kind of replenishing this constellation quite often. Because if you have those big satellites, which are obviously great and they have a different added value, but they stay up there for a long time. And then you have an old technology up there, a 10-year-old technology, 12-year-old technology. Whereas these guys, you know, they're being replaced all the time, so that the technology is always on top of what is available right now. And as you can see, there are different messages. If we really like you and you're nice to us, you can maybe write a message on the Dove and we can send it to space, but we can talk about it offline. But what do we want to do? So this data is cool, right? Data is cool, satellites are cool, but why does it matter? It doesn't matter unless we can do something useful with it. So we want to index Earth, just kind of the way Google indexed internet. We want to give, again, going back to numbers, we are usually using artificial intelligence where you maybe guys saw there was this product that Google has released some time ago where algorithms were able to go through pictures of cats and dogs, and they were able to see, to determine what is a cat, what is a dog. So we're kind of doing the same thing with our imagery, where our algorithms are able to recognize houses, cars, trees, rivers, whatnot. And that can give you a really precise number about what is happening on Earth. So you can ask, for instance, how many trees have been cut in northeast Belgium between March and April 2020, and you get it instantly a number of how many houses were destroyed during this hurricane in Costa Rica, and you get a number. So that's something that is going to give you a lot of information, kind of awareness of what is happening. Even trivial questions like, what's the best day to go shop at IKEA? And based on the numbers of cars in the parking lot, that algorithm, you know, is going to be able to give you some kind of statistical reference, which is probably going to be 3 a.m. on Thursday. But that's what's the kind of information that you're going to be able to get out of it. Because end users do not really care where the data is coming from. If it's coming from a satellite or a plane or a helicopter or whatever in situ, they just want to have a solution to their problem. So it's very important to turn that satellite data into an application, to information, into a service, into something that an end user can use. That just shows you, for instance, when we are monitoring deforestation in Amazon and how quickly it's progressing, which is pretty scary. And but here you can see, you know, we're counting ships. So if there's an illegal boat entering a port, the port operator would get a notification about that quite early. But now shifting gears a little bit, like I wanted to tell you know why was Planet really set up? Like doing cool startups and new space companies is obviously super fascinating, but there needs to be a purpose to it. And our founders really believe that, you know, we've started this company, or they've started this company to really make a positive change in the world. So one of the things that we're doing, we are giving a lot of data to media worldwide to really provide evidence for various things that are happening around the world. So when, for instance, governments are saying that something is not happening, as Myanmar did a couple years ago, we're like, actually, well, you are burning these villages because we have pictures of it. When Brazil is saying, well, no, there's no deforestation happening, we're like, well, actually it is. We can see that. So it's just really bringing some factual information into the stories that you read in media. And we think it's extremely important to let people know what it really is happening. And the last thing that I want to tell you, it kind of goes in that vein, is to a little bit about techno-utopianism. I don't know if you guys know what that means, but it's just that, you know, we are in the space sector because we really like space, right? And we are all, this is, I think, what is special about the space sector that attracts really passionate people. Most people do not enter this game because of a paycheck, really. We enter it because we are fascinated by space and what it can do. But we at Planet really want to urge you to do space in a smart way. Technology does not always equal progress, right? There's a lot of technology out there that hasn't been really useful. If you want to start a business, or if you want to work in space, or if you want to do research, think about what really are you bringing to the society and to the world we're living in? Are you helping at all? Is this new research that you're doing? Is this new idea that you're having? Is it really helping anybody? Don't just build a cool toy because it's cool. This is why so many startups fail, because people have brilliant ideas, but they have no idea how to put it into a market. And they also do not have a business plan. And those ideas are cool, but not necessarily useful. We have, for instance, looked at the Sustainable Development Goals. Hopefully you guys are familiar with them. There's 17 of those. And we have came to a conclusion, there are actually studies done on that 13 of those goals can be addressed by Earth observation, one way or the other. So think about it, 13 out of 17. Our CEO, Will Marshall, often says, if your startup doesn't help any of those, then stop working on it. I mean, I know this is quite harsh, but we really do have a lot of problems in the world right now. Our planet is on fire. It's the biodiversity loss is terrible, climate change, terrible, famine and hunger, terrible. And let's use this knowledge that we have and this technology that we have to really help humanity, because we really can do that. And you no longer have to choose between a commercial or humanitarian activities. Back in the day, people thought, when you thought about industry, you thought of really cold companies who just care about profit, and they would sell their own grandmother just to make money. Or when you were thinking about humanitarian, they were like, oh, those crazy people tying themselves to the trees. But it doesn't necessarily have to be either or. It can be both, and there is a balance. You can have a viable business and do something really profitable while you're helping the world today. You can do both, and it is really possible. And you can, make money and still be able to look yourself in a mirror when you wake up in the morning. So I would really urge you to keep that in mind when you're thinking about your next thing or your next big project. Have a real focus on what you can do that can be helpful. You can be kind of a smart businessman and doing good at the same time. And I would really like to leave you with that, because what I really love about SGC, because it brings people from all over the world and different backgrounds and different struggles. Space is really something that, is, as this event is called, SpaceGen United, it unites us. And I would like to kind of keep that spirit going and make sure that we're using this technology into something that really makes the world a better place, as cheesy as it sounds. Thank you.
Great, and thank you very much, Agnieszka. We've had some great questions coming in on Zoom and on YouTube, so please, to everyone watching, keep sending those in. That was a really interesting presentation, and I learned a lot about Planet from some of the slides on there. That was great. One question that we got from a viewer on Zoom is related to some of your previous positions, for example, at Secure World Foundation, about space sustainability. So at the end of, as you said, Planet has launched over 400 satellites. At the end of their lifetimes, what is the plan to deorbit those? How long do those stay on orbit?
That's a very good question, and it's not a trivial question. I think a lot of people, when these mega constellations kind of started operating, there's not that many of them just yet, but it's a matter of time. There was a huge kind of fear that they're going to obviously cause a lot of debris, a lot of mess in space. There's going to be a lot of small objects that are going to be orbiting around and being potential threat. So we have been thinking about this very carefully, and we do think it's extremely important to be a responsible space actor and behave responsibly. Especially, we have just launched a few hundred, but you have companies coming up like Starlink and Amazon, et cetera, that want to launch thousands. So it's extremely important that they do it in a responsible way. It's not a very obvious way how to, or obvious thing how to do it, because there are not really norms of behavior just yet, unfortunately. We are working on it. We're trying to do it. It's not there yet. For our specific purposes, we have a pretty easy approach, let's say. Our satellites, like I said, the majority of them, the small ones, are very small. And they're quite low. They're low Earth orbit at 500 kilometers from Earth. So their lifespan, it's about 3 to 4 years. And because of atmospheric drag, they come lower, 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 and eventually they burn in atmosphere. So they do not stay up there. They disappear. And this is why we need to replenish them all the time, because like I said, they're only 3-4 years around. So these guys, it's very easy. With the larger ones, like SkySats and Rapidize, these guys are bigger. They're about 150 kilos, kind of the size of a small refrigerator. These guys need to be deorbited. And this is precisely what we're doing now with the Rapidize satellites. They are being deorbited as we speak. This process takes time, but we are bringing them down because we definitely do not want to leave junk up there. So yeah, but good question, and hopefully all the other space actors think about these things as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's definitely an important issue that some of the people involved at SGU are working on. We have one question from Vicky on Zoom asking about what are some of the biggest barriers preventing women from entering and succeeding in the space industry, and what you see as some actions that can be taken to remove those barriers.
Yeah, this is a good question. It's a heavy question, really. You know, I am involved in a lot of kind of women in aerospace, and a lot of different groups, and where we're trying to support each other. But really, I think the biggest barrier is us, and the self-doubt, really. I think a lot of women, and I mean, I was a victim of that as well. We don't really have enough faith in ourselves often, and we often don't think we're good enough, or we're not assertive enough. And that works against. I think it took me a while to kind of develop a thick skin and be like, you know, I'm here for a reason. I have something to say. I've worked hard for this. I have a place around the table, wherever the table is, and push through that. You know, I was quite lucky to have very good mentors in my life. I think mentors are extremely important. And people who kind of believed in me and wanted to to help me out and to support really my growth. But I like, one advice that I can give, just be confident, believe in yourself, speak up. I don't know if you guys watched ever Dirty Dancing. That's an old movie, but nobody puts baby in a corner. So keep that in mind. It's we need to support each other. I think women also need to support other women. It's not always the case. I've had actually a lot of mentors and people who have helped me out. Most of them were men, because for women it's so hard to get up there when they are up there. They hold on to their positions so hard, and they're a bit competitive and threatened by other women. So we cannot blame everything on men. I think we all have to play our part. And for me, is what one of my mentors told me is pay it forward. If somebody helps you out, you help the next person. So I try to give as much time as I can to speak with young people, to actually when they write me an email, I reply, I pick up the phone, I give them advice. But pay it forward, really, and show him the ropes. I think this is the best we can do.
Absolutely, that's a great answer, and it's related to one of the Sustainable Development Goals, as you were talking about, is gender equality, and it's good to see that people in the space industry are working towards all of the Sustainable Development Goals. We had one question about, you mentioned that 13 of the Sustainable Development Goals could be addressed with space applications. Are there any that Planet is specifically focused on, and what are the 4 that are outside of the scope of even Planet's satellites?
You mean outside of the scope of Planet, or what Planet is focusing on?
Sure. So just any specific examples.
Okay.
You mentioned one about logging in the Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and there's some that are very obvious and some that are not. Obviously, zero hunger, number two, SDG number two is a big one. It has to do with agriculture and precision farming, Earth observation, GNSS are big, can be a big tool to use for precision farming and to monitor plots and really assist in sort of land issues, let's say. So that's number one. We're actually, our biggest sector is agriculture right now. Our biggest customer base comes from the agriculture sector. So that's a big one. Life on land, it's the same thing. You know, it's a biodiversity. We are monitoring what is happening. We can monitor for poachers. We can monitor for biodiversity loss. We can monitor for deforestation. So this is a really kind of obvious one. And then of course, climate action, right? This is the one that you see all the time. You know, we look at what is happening in Arctic, what is happening in oceans, and the sea level rise and natural disasters and all of these things. So those are kind of I would say the most obvious ones.
Absolutely, thank you. Some of the questioners expressed some questions or concerns about how widespread use of Earth observation and widespread access to those images could lead to some privacy concerns. Does Planet have any concerns about, you know, some governments getting access to data that may harm their own citizens, or any response to privacy concerns like that to their data?
So, I mean, obviously privacy issue, I mean, this is the question that always comes up. And I think this is going to be an issue eventually. It's definitely not right now. It's not right now because the resolution of those images is not high enough. We don't see faces. We do not see license plates, even though, you know, in movies, it looks like we do, but we don't. You know, I'm not speaking for obviously military spy satellites. That's a different thing, but we don't have control over it. For commercial companies, we cannot go below a 30 centimeter resolution, or above 30 centimeter resolution. So it's really, I mean, when you concern about privacy, it's probably the biggest issue with social media, you know, and and what you post there, and people really, you know, checking your life on that, or cameras that are monitoring the streets, you know, just for safety, or ATM machines that have cameras, whatever. That's when they see your face and see where you're going, where you, what you're doing. I think that's a bigger privacy issue. With satellites, it's not really at that level at all. So it's not something that we need to be concerned anytime soon.
Of course, yeah. As you know, SGAC attracts a lot of people who know a lot about very specific parts of space, and we had a couple people with some more technical questions. Saad on YouTube asked about the orbit of the SkySats. Do they follow the same sun-synchronized orbit as the doves, or are they in a different orbit that allows them to make use of their more maneuverability?
It is, yeah, it's a good question. It is this sun-synchronous orbit, but it's a little bit tilted. And I should have I don't have an image for that to show you, but they cross over a bit. So it's inclined orbits. And we actually have, SkySats have two inclined orbits, so that they can go over same place at least twice a day. So they pass on in the morning and in the afternoon. Plus we can obviously, they have propulsion, so we can actually task them to go somewhere. So with SkySats, we can actually shoot a picture, you know, 6-7 times a day if we need to, of the same area. But kind of automatically it would be twice a day, and those are the inclined orbits.
Sure. And you mentioned agriculture was one of your big sectors. What difference in sectors do you see between the doves and the SkySats as to your customers? Do some customers have more interest in the data from the doves with the lower resolution, or the taskability?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question. I think it depends what it's used, like what the customer wants to use. I mean, I think if you just want to monitor and just have a general awareness what is going on, then doves are perfect. For agriculture, also doves are really good. You don't really need very high resolution for agriculture. So Rapid Eyes were actually the satellites that we're deorbiting. They were 5-6 meter resolution, and and they were actually built specifically for agriculture. So whereas with SkySats, any sort of security, defense, I mean, we're not really doing much of defense, but somewhat security, defense, any sort of things that you really need to look at up closely, border monitoring, movements of, I don't know, refugees, illegal fishing. I mean, SkySats then come very handy because you can really zoom in and see the details of what is happening.
Absolutely, that makes sense. One graphic that stood out to Savary was on Zoom was how many launch vehicles that Planet has launched on. It seems that the Doves have been on different rockets in many different countries. How does Planet have that relationship with different launchers, and how do you choose which launchers, which satellites will go on?
Yeah, it's a price date ratio, really. I mean, we don't have any, we're not in a committed relationship with anybody on this. So we are just going, because we are a secondary payload, so we cannot really drive a date, and we're kind of, dependent on the others, unless, small rockets will be more common. We were just on the last rocket lab launch. We had 5 satellites on that last launch that failed in space, so we lost 5 satellites. That obviously wasn't great, but it's part of the business. Again, it's about taking a risk and supporting a new company that is trying to enter the launch business, because for us this is quite interesting to have a rocket that can actually gear and be geared towards us and actually offer us kind of a priority. But normally, we have to go with the others. So really, we have launched, with Americans, Russians, Indians, Europeans. We're launching later this month, I think next week, on Falcon 9, 3 more SkySats. We're launching in August with Arianespace on Vega, 26 Doves. So it really, I mean, it's all a kind of a price date ratio. It's not that we have a kind of a favorite rocket or something. It's just whoever's going to take us where we need to go, we'll go.
Definitely, and having worked with so many different launch providers, probably more than any other company out there, do you feel that Planet has special insights into the different capabilities? Do some
Sure.
Or some more delayed than others? Yeah.
Yeah, sure, of course. We've developed these relationships, especially that we launch 4, 5, 6 times a year, which is not a typical also a schedule. Most a lot of, like, especially when you talk about the really big satellites, they launch once in a few years, or maybe once a year. It's like a big deal. We just had like 2 launches, or one of them failed last month. So we have 2 more like this and next month. So, and I think some at the end of the year. So we're on it, like really, really regularly, and we have relationships with these providers. We obviously know which ones, are easier to work with, and which are kind of better or cheaper or more reliable or whatever. I mean, there are different pros and cons for these decisions, but it's I think it's good to have those kind of options, and not just to rely on one launcher, because you can also obviously, more competition there is, you can drive the price down a little bit.
For sure, yeah. And you've spoken a bit about the markets that Planet has made big impacts on. You've mentioned agriculture and a lot of the SDGs a few times. What has been the most surprising application of Planet's data in your experience? Did anything come out and just blow you away, and you and Planet couldn't even have considered this potential use for how your data was used?
This is a hard question. I don't know. I mean, there's been quite a lot. I know that there's like our data has been used, which, by the way, I love this idea, for monitoring vineyards and winemaking in southern France, which I'm like, fantastic app. I was like, our data can help if you can pay us with wine, you know. We'll take that. So I think this is nice. The other one that's a very, very cool application that we're working, it's coral reef mapping. And this is a big international initiative. It isn't just us. It's several, you know, NGOs and Bloomberg is involved in that. And we are really mapping coral reefs around the world. And really looking about on how they are changing, how, you know, some of them are destroyed, and it's really quite extraordinary effort, I would have to say.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of these applications, I mean, it's impressive that they can be done with just imagery satellites. Now in the industry, we see, you know, radar and hyperspectral satellites. Has Planet ever considered going beyond imagery, going into a different part of the spectrum to collect data there about Earth?
Maybe. We are definitely not stopping where we are. So, you know, we are a type of company that is going to grow continuously and develop new sensors and new ways to kind of spin Earth observation to get more out of those images. So, you know, we are looking at future projects. I can't really talk about it much yet, but we're definitely not going to just rest at the constellations that we have, but we're going to continue to innovate and develop.
Of course, yeah. And I'm just going to try one more time to get some future plans out of you. We have a lot of astronomers in the chat, some of whom were asking if maybe the satellites could be turned around, or future versions could be used optically facing outwards,
yeah,
to observe other planets, stars, and other areas.
Yeah, no, this is really interesting, and this is not a crazy question. Actually, we've been talking. I mean, I don't know how quickly something like that would happen. I cannot really, you know, don't quote me. And this is what Planet is going to do. But our founders, for sure, are really interested in this, and particularly also using satellites for space debris monitoring, right? So monitoring really the space environment per se, but also, yeah, looking outward and looking at the moon and maybe eventually even further down. So, yeah, so it's definitely something that we've been scratching our heads around. I don't know if we're there yet, but this is not, let's say, this is not impossible. I think, you know, if we're going to colonize moon, you bet there's going to be some Planet satellites floating around the moon as well. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be a very exciting application, definitely a new application for some of this technology. So you previously worked at the European Commission, and Planet has some close relationships with governments, has you know, provided data to, you know, European governments, to the US. How do those relationships evolve over time, and how are they different from your relationships with commercial partners who you sell, for example, agricultural data?
They're very different. They're very different because governments work on very different schedules. So everything in a government, the processes are quite long. So for instance, when you work with commercial customers, it's usually pretty quick. They're either interested or not, right? So you do your pitch, you do your proposal, you negotiate, and you agree. You know, so like some happens in a few weeks, sometimes a few months max. In the government, it takes years. So these procurements are very, very long. You start working with governments quite early on, trying to hopefully influence a little bit of the requirements to make sure that actually you can participate in whatever the tender is going to be. So bidding is kind of the last thing. So there's a lot of lobbying, a lot of influencing. First of all, to even get budgets for whatever. Then when the budgets are there, to make sure that there is a call. Then when there's idea for a call, to make sure that the content of that call is something that you can participate in. And then, you know, depending if you do it yourself, or you bid yourself, or you do it with partners. So it's a very, very lengthy process. And so those wins are not as often. They don't happen as often, but they're usually bigger, right? So You have a lot of small commercial deals with government. It's less, but it's usually, you know, multi-million dollar, euro, whatever deal usually. So, and those relationships also, you know, because governments are very careful how they deal with industry. There cannot create monopoly. There cannot be any favoritism. They also have their, especially nowadays, you know, there's all these kind of protectionist sentiments on both sides of the ocean. So would they really contract an American company? Is Planet an American company? You know, we have quarter of our workforce in Germany. I didn't mention that. We have our European headquarters in Berlin. You know, we have over 100 people in Europe. All our satellites, by the way, are operated out of Berlin. So our mission control is in Berlin. And so if you guys want to visit, let me know. It's pretty cool to see. It probably not now because, you know, now with pandemic, it's all weird, but eventually when we get back to normal. And so yeah, so there's a lot of political issues also that play into kind of decision making. So it's not always the best company or the best proposal wins, but there's also political pressures depending where you're from, depending where the money goes. You know, Europe, for instance, European government does not want to pay necessarily European taxpayers money and, you know, have them go to US. So there's a lot of, yeah, so it's a lot of kind of massaging of these relationships and being present and making these connections and working on them for a long time.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it's one of the big important factors of the space industry, dealing with governments. It's constant across all parts of the space industry. So we are, SGAC is a very international organization,
right?
And we often hear concerns that many space jobs in the U.S. are limited to U.S. citizens, and I believe you have both U.S. and Polish citizenship. Planet does not restrict its employment to U.S. citizens. Is there anything that makes Planet a particularly great place for SGAC members and SGU participants to potentially apply for jobs?
Well, obviously, first of all, it's run by SGAC guys. It has a lot of SGAC people working there already. We're like, you know, there's like a SGAC within Planet. So that mindset is there. We are one of the very few, not only really, honestly, I do not know any other company in the space sector that does not have any restrictions on hiring, that we actually hire people worldwide. We obviously, it takes, you know, you have to be an added value, and, you know, it has to make sense. But if we believe that somebody is really good for us, we're going to, you know, work on getting the paperwork done, which most companies don't want to do that because it's expensive and it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. But we do that. So we employ people. And so in our big offices, both in San Francisco and Berlin, we have their international group. And so you can work in both. We have an office also in DC. And then we have a bunch of people working remotely too, especially if you're in sales, because we need people, you know, in those markets where we're working. So we have people in Australia, Asia, Africa, South America, and yeah, different places. So it's really a great company to work for. It's, first of all, that we are doing really, I mean, obviously, you know, if you're really into exploration, you want to go to Mars, and be an astronaut, like Planet's probably not gonna get you there. You know, it's it's just a different space business, but it is extremely interesting because first of all, it's run by people who truly believe that what we're doing can make a difference in the world. So you work for a company, whereas I, for instance, because I always worked for public sector or NGOs before, and I never really thought about going to industry because I was like, you know, I want to have a purpose and I don't want to sell myself, and I want to, you know, have a positive impact on the world. And I really truly believe Planet is doing that. We obviously have to be profitable, otherwise we won't be able to do what we're doing. We have to make money, but making profit, it's a mean, it's not an end. And I think for us, and I think this is what kind of sets us apart, like people are the leadership is extremely passionate about what we're doing. It's really passionate about humanity and making life on Earth a bit easier. And they also, that also translates about how they treat their employees. We are like one big family. The company really treats us really, really well. It's a feeling, you're not lost in this huge corporation that nobody knows your name. It's actually very, very familiar, and it's very casual, and it's very diverse. It's extremely open-minded. So it doesn't matter what your, background is, or culture, or skin color, or sexual orientation, whatever. Like, it's, more diverse the better. So it's really a good place. For me, I wake up in the morning, and it gives me joy to work for this company, because I do believe in its mission. So we are very mission driven. So if this is something that some of the members are as well, then that's definitely a company to look at.
That's fantastic. And I saw your contact information was up on the last slide, so I'm sure you may have some SGAC people reaching out afterwards. I'm just going to let people know on Zoom and YouTube that this is the last call for questions. We're almost at the end here, so please put anything you have in the chat. One thing you mentioned at the very beginning was that as Planet was founded by a bunch of SGAC people who saw Planet was the next big thing for them after SGAC. To you and to other people at Planet, what's the next big thing for Planet, for space? Is there a next big step that you see in the sector coming?
This is a difficult question. I'm probably not the best one to answer, because I am the type of person, it's also in my life, when people ask me, where do you want to be in like 5 years? Where do you want to see? And I was like, well, I just want to make sure that I make it to tomorrow. So I really live my life. And I think we also, we're here and now. We're innovating so fast. And when people ask us, oh, where do you see Planet in 10 years? Like 10 years ago, we didn't even exist. So, you know what I mean? Like, and nobody knew we're going to be like, it was 50-50 chance that this company is going to make it. Could have gone totally bust. Or, now we have the largest constellation of satellites in the world, period. We are the only ones who are monitoring, globe every year, every day, period. So it's really like, we can give some wishes, but I really say more, we often too focus on the future and we forget about today. Let's really be super good at what we're doing now. Let's make this technology magnificent, and let's have it like lead us to the next thing, and then things just happen very quickly. I think we haven't quite, when the guys were setting up that company, they didn't quite realize where it's going to get them. They didn't quite think they're going to like buy a company off of Google. They didn't think that they're going to reach their mission 1 in like 4 years or 5 years of existence of a company, So I think, in the next thing, from my kind of a humanitarian idealistic point of view, I would like to see, Earth observation, and I'm going to focus on Earth observation now, to be like a kind of a basic commodity, just like internet. Everybody's using internet, or everybody's using GPS on their phone, or GNSS on their phone, and in the car, whatever, and nobody even thinks that it's connected to space. I want space data kind of be like that too, that people are just going to get that data in combination with algorithms, artificial intelligence, that is, you're just going to get information about your surroundings and about the forests around you, and national parks, and biodiversity, but also agriculture, whatnot, and that's just going to be information that we're going to be used to using, and that we're going to really turn around this planet, not Planet the company, but Planet Earth, and turn around a little bit, in the sense that we're going to stop this crazy kind of consumption of our resources, and we're going to be able to actually, have a nice green place with clean air and happy people. Like, that's kind of the end goal. But like, I know this is very idealistic and naive, but like, one has to dream.
That's a fantastic vision for Planet the company and Planet the planet. And I appreciate you very much for taking the time, Agnieszka. And thank you again to Planet, the company, and for you for joining us for the first keynote on day 3 of SGU. That's everything. And thank you, everyone who's joined on Zoom and on YouTube. And we're looking forward to seeing everyone in the next keynote. Thank you, Agnieszka.
Thank you. My pleasure. Good luck, guys.